Hi. For over a year now, in my free time outside of work, I've been deeply immersed in indie game development. During this time, I've created 5 awesome Game Jam games. Right now, I'm working on 2 serious projects of varying scales, which I'll cover in upcoming videos. The first project, which I've been sharing updates about on social media for over a year, is D.F.D, while the other is an experimental short horror game. Today, I'll walk you through how D.F.D has evolved over the past year, my vision for the game, and what's coming next. By the way, I'm Alex, and this is the Red Oni Games channel. If you enjoy the content, hit that like button, and let's dive right in. At the end of the video, I've included a bit of unedited gameplay with original sound, so you can check out the current quality of the project. Originally, the project had fairly modest ambitions and was planned as a web-based game, similar to titles you'd find on itch.io. But the more I worked on it, the more my internal standards kept pushing me to rework different parts of the game. And that, of course, extended the development timeline. In all honesty, I could have rushed it and released a subpar version by the end of last year. But instead, I kept tweaking and improving the core gameplay, testing it on friends, and revising it over and over. While I'm still not fully satisfied with certain aspects, the game feels significantly more polished than it did a year ago. Before I get into the specifics of what's been done and what's still planned, I need to give you a clear sense of what this game is all about. The game takes place on an alternate Earth in the late 21st century. Civilization hasn't advanced much beyond our current level, largely due to constant catastrophes, epidemics, and wars. And while things were tough, it wasn't until the appearance of a phenomenon known as chorus that the world plunged into chaos. Vast areas of land became uninhabitable, hunger spread, and the global population drastically declined. Nations broke down into quasi-state entities, with large and small factions or communities emerging. I describe the game's world as Mad Max meets Death Stranding. As you can guess, D.F.D is a single-player, story-driven car action game. Now, some of you might be wondering about multiplayer. As of now, it's not planned, simply because I'm limited in resources. I just don't have the capacity to maintain a multiplayer game. But maybe, once the single-player portion is finished, I'll explore the possibility of adding multiplayer. The campaign will consist of a variety of mission types in different formats. I'd compare the campaign structure to Armored Core 6. Players will have the freedom to choose which mission they want to start. The story will be told through cutscenes, dialogues, and intermission sequences. Completing objectives during missions will earn you resources, which can be spent on buying new vehicles and upgrading them. I'm also exploring the idea of open missions, where players can roam large maps and engage in side activities, in addition to the main objectives. The setting naturally lends itself to vast, empty spaces, so creating small open worlds shouldn't be too difficult. One of my personal goals is to make sure every mission has its own unique feature. I don't want it to just be a drive from point A to point B and kill a bunch of enemies kind of game. And yes, in the story mode, your enemies won't only be cars. But that's all for the final release. Right now, the core gameplay is essentially ready in the form of an arena shooter mode. Structurally, it hasn't changed much from the Game Jam version, and it's heavily inspired by classics like Quake 3, Unreal Tournament, and Twisted Metal. Now let's dive deeper into the game itself. The 2 main issues with the early version were game feel and vehicle physics. Game feel is a broad concept that includes controls, gameplay tempo, and even things like the impact of shooting. The first major change was dropping the pseudo-isometric camera. Initially, I wanted to keep it as an optional view, but eventually I scrapped that idea entirely. Why? Well, for one, it just wasn't convenient. Even I sometimes got confused about left and right when starting a new play session. Imagine how confusing it would be for new players. But with the camera placed behind the vehicle, those problems disappear. Another reason is that it feels way more immersive. You're much closer to the action. Bullets aren't just whizzing 30 meters away, they're flying right past your head. One more reason for dropping the original camera was the revamped level design. I prefer the level design in Twisted Metal, one of its key features being multi-level environments. You might be trying to shake off enemies on the highway, then suddenly find yourself on a building's roof, only to drop through a hole onto an indoor parking lot. A high camera just complicates things in such a setup. How do you handle cutting off part of the geometry above the player's car? Should the camera zoom in when it bumps into a ceiling? And how does that affect gameplay? These are all solvable problems, but wouldn't it be more productive to spend development time on something that actually improves the game? That's why I ultimately decided the isometric view wasn't necessary. In the jam version of the game, the cars handled very poorly and inaccurately. They would stop dead when hit, collision damage felt wrong, and they'd get stuck. The cars didn't feel like they had any weight, and they couldn't drift properly. What does all that mean? A ton of work, of course. To tackle this, I had to master two things first: how tire physics work and how parameters like lateral friction affect a car's handling, and second, that Unity's physics system is, let's say, less than ideal. Unity has definitely tested my patience here. I spent an insane amount of time reworking the vehicle physics and controls over and over. The end result isn't arcade-style physics, but something closer to what's known as simcade physics. The movement is simulated based on tire physics, and there's even automatic gear shifting. Among the testers, opinions have been mixed. Pure arcade-style physics might work better for arena combat, like in Twisted Metal, but I have bigger ambitions than just arena fights. I want the driving to be fun, even without combat. Of course, the result won't be perfect, but I'm doing my best, and I hope you'll appreciate it. If D.F.D were just a racing game, I could stop here and focus on the driving and vehicle physics, but it's just as important to destroy enemies as it is to drive. And there are plenty of ways to do that. You've got a range of weapons, external mods like a train plow for ramming, and unique abilities for each vehicle. What's the point of different cars if they all feel the same, right? That's why I assign specific abilities to certain vehicles. Now, you always know the buggy can jump, and when upgraded, it can scatter and ignite nearby enemies, while the Spider 3906 has automated turrets on board. Each car also has its own physical traits, like weight and traction. Now, about the weapons. If you noticed in the footage, you can't manually aim in my game. That's a deliberate choice. Sure, manual aiming might make games like this more comfortable, but my experience with such projects tells me that driving takes a backseat when you can aim freely. Take games like Hard Truck Apocalypse, Warhammer 40,000 Speed Freaks, or the Fumes demo. In all of them, you often don't even look where you're driving. You can steer in one direction and aim in another, or just circle an enemy and shoot like it's a shooting gallery. To me, these games feel like a turret section from a Call of Duty mission, except you can still steer the vehicle. Plus, this approach limits level design since the maps have to be wide and open if players aren't paying attention to where they're going. I want to force players to use a variety of mechanics and combine weapons and abilities to kill enemies. Each weapon in the game has a unique role, and you need to know when to use each one for maximum effectiveness. For instance, machine guns shoot straight ahead, so you'll need to weave your car around to aim, whereas the flamethrower simply scorches everything in front of you. The laser gun and Tesla gun both have auto-targeting, as does the rocket launcher, though it works slightly differently. I might give machine guns more flexibility and allow some auto-targeting, but full 360-degree aiming won't be a thing. In the Jam version, picking up a new weapon would replace your old one. I didn't like that, so I decided to go with a classic approach. However many weapons you pick up, that's how many you'll have. Just make sure to switch between them when needed. Since different guns are useful in different situations, switching weapons at the right time and using them strategically will help you come up with your own tactics to defeat enemies. And now, ammo is no longer universal. Each weapon has its own specific ammo type. This means there are a lot more pickups on the map, including some I haven't mentioned yet, like full-on power-ups. At the moment, there are 3 types of ramming mods available: the train plow I mentioned, which deals heavy damage on impact the power core, which sends enemies flying, great for pushing them off roofs or into lava, and circular saws that slice through enemies on contact. But all of this applies to the arena mode. In the story missions, you'll need to pre-configure your loadout, and you can scavenge ammo from defeated enemies and in special zones. A bit about optimization. I don't have the means to test the game on a wide variety of setups at home, but I still want it to run well for as many players as possible. I'm working with an older rig, and my goal is to have the game running at a stable 60 FPS on max settings with this hardware. You can see the specs of my PC on the screen. There's still a lot of optimization work to do. I'm even reworking some of the purchased asset models to reduce draw calls and polygons in the frame, while also improving their visuals. The optimization seems to be going pretty well so far. One tester recently played on a laptop with an Intel HD graphics 520, and they didn't encounter too many problems. As for the graphics, what you see in this video is far from final. You may have noticed that the asset quality varies, and in some places there are special textures with a metric grid. Some assets will be completely redesigned. For example, this car is still from the Jam version of the game. Overall, the visual quality I'm aiming for is pretty much what you see here. I'm not setting the bar too high because as a mostly solo developer, I can't afford to get too bogged down in making models. Otherwise, the game will never release. The plan is to release the game in Steam Early Access first, with 5 vehicles, 1 or 2 scripted story missions, and a championship mode with 4 arenas, basically arena battles with varying conditions. I'm not ready to commit to a timeline just yet. As you can see, development is steadily moving forward, but there's still a lot of work ahead. If you're interested in helping with testing or development, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks for watching. Please share this video with your friends and community. It's really important to me right now. If you like the game and video, please like and subscribe. See you next time.
У каждой машины есть свои особенности. Например, твоя Ада Сайонара оборудована запасом мин. Вывел кнопку для их использования на экран. Мины срабатывают на приближение любого авто, в том числе твоего, так что будь аккуратнее. Да ты крут, заезжай в здание, и мы закончим на этом.